All right, so solving by substitution, there are two ways that you would probably see this stuff. One of the ways you're going to see it is the way they're showing you in questions 1 and 2. So let me just give you some how-tos, okay? So how to solve by substitution. So step 1 is pretty easy. This is one where they give you two equations. Okay, this is, if you guys remember in geometry, this is called your given. Right? This is what's automatically provided for you. So they're going to give you two equations. Now, I recommend, so you don't have to do this, but a lot of times this is probably the best way to do it. I recommend writing the equations side by side. It's just easier to work with them when they're side by side. Okay, and you'll see me do that when I do the examples. Third one, choose an equation. You're going to choose one equation and solve for a variable. Any variable. Most people always want to solve for y, but it could be x, or if the equations are in terms of a and b, just solve for one of them. Okay, but solve for one. Now, pay close attention, because every once in a while, they already have them solved for you. Or maybe one of the equations is really easy to solve for a letter if you just move one number over. Like, look at them. Don't just start doing the work, okay? I tell my calc students, that's like what we call like being a robot. The instructions say do this, so that's what you do. Instead of thinking before you leap, right, you just jump right into it. Don't do that. Just think before you do that. So choose one equation and solve for a variable. I know this sounds like a lot, but substitute that variable equation into the other equation. I know that sounds kind of vague, but you'll see it right now. So substitute the variable equation into the other equation. 5. Solve for one variable. And 6, use the solved variable to solve for the other variable. And again, this may not make a lot of sense if you just read through it, okay? But right now when we go through some examples, it'll be a lot easier. And by the way, step 3, I'm going to put right here, if necessary. You may not have to do it. They may already have solved something for you. So then you may not have to choose an equation and solve for a variable, but you will have to substitute, you will have to solve and then solve again. Remember, when you solve a system of equations, you are solving for where their graphs would collide with each other. And if you're thinking about it, if it's two graphs, if it's two lines and they crash into each other at a point, and a point has two variables, x, y, right? Or a, b, or something like that. So you're always having to solve for two things. So when you solve for one thing, don't stop and say, yay, I did it, and move on. You got to solve for two different variables, okay? Usually an x and a y, but not always. So let me show you an example of this. So we're just going to put solve, and I'm going to write two different equations. Okay, y equal to 2x plus 4, and y equal to negative 4x plus 2. Notice I already wrote them side by side. They're given to you, so step 1's taken care of. Step 2 is already taken care of. Okay, write them side by side. Step 3, choose one equation and solve for a variable. Notice I don't have to do that. Both equations have been solved for y. Okay, great. So what am I going to do? Substitute a variable into the other equation. So I'm going to choose one equation. So let's go with the left one, okay? The left one says that y, okay, this y is equal to 2x plus 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw that over here. Sure. Where the y is in the other equation, I'm going to replace that with 2x plus 4. Okay? So that is going to go where the y is. So here we go. I'm just going to write that in. 2x plus 4, okay, is equal to negative 4x plus 2. So I'm just using a different color so you guys can see what changed. Okay? So the y, instead of it just saying y, I put 2x plus 4. And the reason why I can do that is because the left side equation is saying anywhere you see a y, write 2x plus 4. So there you go. 2x plus 4 equals negative 4x plus 2. So I'm going to start solving. Okay? So I'm going to add 4x to both sides. That's going to give me 6x plus 4 equals to 2. Now I'm going to subtract by 4 on both sides. Now, by the way, if we happen to get fractions, it's okay. It happens. Okay, don't freak out. Just a normal thing here. So I get 6x is equal to negative 2. Okay, now I have to divide by 6. So x is equal to negative 1/3. That's 2 over 6. It reduces to 1/3. Notice I solved for one answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put part of my answer here. Okay, so my answer should be a point. So I'm going to put negative 1/3. That's my x value. There it is. Okay, negative 1/3. But I still need my y value. So now I'm going to get that x value. Okay, it says x is equal to negative 1/3. And I'm going to plug it back over here to that equation. Okay, I'm going to throw it back to the one I started. So you start at one point, you go to the other equation, you do a bunch of work, and then you got to go back to where you started. Now I'm going to plug in a negative 1/3 where the x is. So here we go. Y equals 2 times a negative 1/3. I'm just changing the color just because of the fact that I want you to see what happened. Okay, and then let's multiply here. So y equals negative 2/3 plus 4. And negative 2/3 plus 4 is 3 1/3. So I'm going to put that answer in that point that I have over here. 3 1/3. And there's my answer. Okay, now, by the way, if you guys notice, questions 1 and 2, they both say y equals for both equations, right? You guys can see that? It says y equals this, y equals that, and then for 2, y equals this, y equals that. 3 and 4 are kind of the same. Just that they're not both solved for y. Only one of them is, but it still makes it easy for you. Okay, so I'm not going to do questions 1 and 2 or anything from those because I kind of did with example 1. But let me work on question 4 for you guys. Okay, so question number 4. But before I move on, any questions on this? I know the fractions are kind of weird, but I mean, you guys should have calculators to help you do this. Remember, if you don't have a calculator that can do fractions, Desmos can do fractions. So you can just use Desmos as your calculator. So we good? All right, number 4. So number 4, they give us a negative 4x plus 3y equals 21. And then to the right of it, I'm going to put y equals 2x plus 11. By the way, if you didn't notice, when I do my work, I work vertically. You see how I did this? I work from top to bottom. This is why I tell you to put them side by side. That way you can do all your work and you have enough room back and forth to move, right? Instead of trying to do them all one on top of the other and you get lost as to what's happening. So I always recommend a side-by-side comparison with these, okay? Only with substitution. Whenever you do elimination, usually it's best to keep one on top of the other, okay? But with substitution, this is what I would recommend. So notice how they already solved for y. They say y is 2x plus 11. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this 2x plus 11 and I'm going to put it where the y is on the other equation. So yeah, it's going to look a little weird at first, but it's okay. I'm going to put negative 4x plus 3, and then in a parenthesis I will put what's being substituted. Okay, again, this is why it's called solving by substitution, because you're going to substitute. So instead of a y, I'm putting a 2x plus 11. Okay, now I'm going to distribute, because that's what should be done when you see one of those a number in front of a parenthesis. So we're going to get a 6x plus 33 equals 21. Now, since my variables are both on the left side, I don't have to add or subtract them to both sides. I can just combine them using like terms. So a negative 4x plus a 6x is a 2x plus 33 equals 21. Now I need to move that 33 out. I'm going to subtract it on both sides. So minus 33 on both sides. Okay, so how much is that? That's going to be a 12, right? So 2x equals negative 12. Well, just divide by 2 and you should have your x variable. So divide by 2. X is equal to negative 6. Okay, now that's one of my answers. Let me put that over here. I'm going to put a little coordinate pair right there. So x is negative 6. So now that I know that x is negative 6, I'm going to throw that back over here. Remember, you're going full circle. You start on one side, you go to the other, you do all your work, and then you go back to where you started, okay? Always go back to where you started. So let's go ahead and do this part right here. Y is equal to 2 times negative 6 plus 11. Well, y is equal to negative 12 plus 11. So y is negative 1. So I'm going to get that answer. Put it over here, negative 6 comma negative 1, and there's my solution. Honestly, I don't think solving by substitution is hard to do, but the steps can sometimes be confusing, okay? So you have to make sure that you have your two equations. You choose one to solve for. In our case, we didn't have to do that. They already gave us those first two examples. They already said y is equal to this, okay? So I don't need to worry about that. But then I do need to start the substitution step, right? Bless you. Substitute into another equation and solve. Use that solved answer to substitute into the previous equation and then get your answers, right? We're doing all that. I think it's steps 4 through 6, right? We're doing that, substituting. We haven't had to solve for our own yet. Okay, but that's what's going to happen next. So they give you 4 more. So let me show you how we're going to do one of these. It's up to you. They all kind of are the same thing. I'll choose number 6 here. Let me show you how it works with something like number 6. So number 6, they give us negative 2x plus y equals to negative 4. And negative 6x plus 2y equals negative 20. So notice none of these are solved for. If we start through our 1 through 6 steps, step 1, you're given 2 equations. Well, okay, there you go. Step 2, put them side by side. All right, awesome. Step 3, pick a variable to solve for. Now I am looking at a variable, very specific variable that I think is the easiest one to solve for. Okay, it's either on the left or on the right. Okay, which one do you think, the left equation or the right equation, has a variable that's going to be easy to solve for? Left or right? The left side. Which one, x or y? Say it again. Yeah, the y variable is going to be the easiest one. The reason why the y variable is the easiest one, because it doesn't have a number in front of it. So you don't have to worry about dividing anything out. Okay, so we're going to go with the left equation. We're going to solve for y, so let's do that. Let's add 2x. Let's move that over. I get y equals 2x minus 4. Notice we haven't had to do this with the other problems. The other problems were already done for us. But this time I had to choose which equation. Now, just so you know, there is no wrong choice. But by choosing a different variable, maybe a different equation, you may have a harder substitution to make. But you'll still get the right answer. So don't be scared of solving for any variable. Just that sometimes there's an easiest variable. Okay? Now I'm going to get that y equals to 2x minus 4, and I'm going to throw that right there. So let's plug that in. We get negative 6x plus 2 times 2x minus 4 equals to negative 20. Again, I'm using the red to show you where the change occurred. Okay, now let's distribute. Negative 6x plus 4x minus 8 equals negative 20. Okay, so there you go. We have that. Left side, I have two variables, but I can combine them. I don't need to move them left to right. They're just together. So negative 6x plus 4x, negative 2x minus 8 equals to negative 20. We got to solve for x, so let's get rid of our normal numbers first. So we'll add 8 to both sides. That gives me a negative 2x equal to a negative 12. And if I divide both sides by negative 2, I'll get x equal 6. Now again, I'm going to do a little coordinate pair down here. That way I can keep my information. So x is 6. Once I have that information, I have to plug it back where I came from. Okay, so if x is 6, I get y, whoops, sorry about that, it should stay in blue here. I get y equals to 2 times 6 minus 4. Well, 2 times 6 is 12, and 12 minus 4 is 8. So I'm just going to put my answer over here. I'll put it in a box. And there you go, 6, 8. How could you check your answers? Plugging them in? Yeah, you can plug them in. Give me an easier way. Given everything we've talked about, things you can use, Desmos. Get each equation and put it into Desmos. It's going to draw you a picture of each line. Just touch it where the lines cross, and it should give you your answers. Okay? Now, of course, I'm going to always tell you the teacher thing. Please don't use Desmos just to find the answers and not do any work. Right? Use it to check. Okay? Because remember, your homework, I'm looking for the effort. If you give me all the answers, that's great. You're not going to get any points unless I see you actually tried something. Because I know these problems shouldn't be done all in your head. Maybe some can be done in your head. Sometimes it's easy enough when they'll give you like x plus y equals 10 and the other one says like y equals 8. Okay, well I can do that in my head. But most of them, they're going to require some work. Okay? So do it, but then check your work. You guys have so many ways of actually being able to do that, that it should be something that's kind of easy for you to do. Now guys, this next part I'm not going to do the problem for you, but look at number 9. I am going to set up the equations for you. Okay? So number 9. So it says your internet provider offers 2 different plans. One plan costs 2 cents per email plus $9 monthly service charge. The other plan costs 5 cents per email with no service charge. So let me just write that out real quick. So one plan, and then other plan. I just want to write down what they say. One plan is 2 cents per email plus $9 monthly. Okay, the other one says 5 cents per email, no monthly charge. Okay, so no monthly charge for that. Now, do you guys know what the word per means in math? Per email, like if there were, let's say you had 2 emails, what would you do if it says 2 cents per email and you said I had 2 emails? What do you do? Huh? Multiply, right? You're going to say, well, it's 2 cents per email. If I did 2, it's going to be 2 times 2 cents, so that's 4 cents, right? If I had 10 emails, I'd get 10 times the cost that they're going to give me, right? So 10 times 2 cents, right? So the per email, they're saying you're going to multiply it per email. I don't know how many emails, so I'm just going to call them X. Okay? So the first one, my equation, I'm going to write this. Y equals. All right? So Y equals. Now, 0.02X. And then you notice how they obviously say plus, right? And then $9 monthly. So 9. Okay, how do I write the next one? Y equals, all right, 0.05 what? X. Do I add anything? No, so there's my 2 equations. Now look at part A. It says write a system of equations to model the cost of the 2 internet plans. A is done, okay? We just did part A. It's up to you guys to figure out how many email messages will both plans cost the same. In other words, they're saying solve. When are they going to cross each other? Okay, so for part B, I'm just going to give you a hint. Solve by substitution. Okay, now for part C, it says if you send and receive about 500 email messages per month, which plan would you use? Now notice the receive part doesn't really matter too much. You're sending and receiving. In other words, emails are occurring, okay? So if you send and receive 500 email messages per month, which plan should you use? You have equations for both plans. Y equals 0.02 times the number of emails plus 9, or 0.05 times the number of emails. They say, what happens if you choose 500 emails? So all you're going to do is put the 500 in the X or the Y. Where do I put it? They said 500 emails. The X's, right? The X says 0.5 per email. Email is X's, right? So we're going to put the number 500 where the X goes, and you're going to solve. And then whichever number is bigger, that one's more expensive. The smaller answer is cheaper. So it says, which plan should you use? Well, if you could care less, then you can use any one. But if you're trying to save some money, then you want to choose the one that's less. Okay? So, we're just going to put X equal 500 and decide. Okay? You're going to have to decide which one is for you. Okay? Number 10, they just want you to explain how you would start Number 11, they're saying, hey, one person says there's infinitely many solutions. The other one says the answer is -5/7. Which one is correct? So in other words, solve it and see which one's right. Okay? So we'll stop there. Let's see.